And we're back and continuing our series of Lady Saints of Rome with part 2. And my name is Pastor Chris White. The person we're going to talk about today is Saint Cecilia, who lived around the year 225 AD and who is known as a light to those who are blind. Saint Cecilia is a patron saint of music. In fact, when she is depicted in sacred art, she is always seen tickling the ivories of a pipe organ or making melody to the Lord. The only problem with this is that the pipe organ, or anything remotely like it, didn't exist in her time, and Saint Cecilia is more known for being a preacher than a singer. But to loosely quote Emerson here, consistency, even in historic details, is the hobgoblin of little minds. One of the oldest places of worship in Rome is St. Cecilia's Church in Trastevere, and it is built over a home that stood in the 2nd century belonging to the Cecili family. The archaeological evidence points to this house as having been used for Christian worship in later centuries. While embellishments to the Cecilia story are certain, there's no reason to doubt that Cecilia was a real person and that her life made an impact on the Christian community of Rome so many centuries ago. According to Caxton's Golden Legend, the name Cecilia means either a light to the blind or a lily of heaven. As so often happens in ordinary life, Cecilia lives up to her name. Cecilia came from a senatorial family and was said to be a Christian from a very early age. She was given in marriage to a noble pagan youth by the name of Valerius. This may be an indicator that her parents were not Christians themselves, as it seems a bit odd that they would marry their godly daughter off to a pagan man. It may also be that because of the family's social status, there wasn't a suitable man in her class in the church who was even available. Although Christian faith does not teach the idea of social status, and the Church has done much to ameliorate class distinctions among believers, Roman society was extremely stratified, and it is unlikely that this idea didn't have any coin among the faithful even at this early date. Cecilia sought holy chastity and didn't want to be married, but was required by her father to do so. Having descendants was of prime importance to the head of the family, and so this would have been a normal decision by Cecilia's father. When the hour came for the couple to enter their nuptial bedchamber, Cecilia told her husband a secret that was unknown to all but her. Cecilia had an angel that watches and wards off any who would touch her, that she could retain her virginity. Well, Valerius wanted proof, as any man would in this situation, and Cecilia told him he must first believe in God. He is sent to Pope Urban, who speaks with him and then baptizes him. When Valerius returns to Cecilia, he sees her in her chamber praying, and there's an angel standing by her with flaming wings. The angel is holding a crown of lilies and roses when he places them both on their heads and then vanishes. Valerius's brother Tiburtia drops by to see the happy couple and is so astonished by the floral crowns, which were completely out of season, that he believes their story, and he too submits to Christian baptism. The three of them live as consecrated virgins, even though there is a legal marriage. After their conversions, Valerius and his brother Tiburtius devote themselves to burying those Christians who were being martyred by the prefect of Rome. Burying the dead with dignity was considered in this time a holy work of charity. It was also quite risky if you were trying to avoid persecution yourself. Eventually, the brothers are hauled in and questioned about their dedication to burying Christians. When asked to make a sacrifice to the pagan god Jupiter, the brothers refused and suffered death in the Roman fashion of beheading. Cecilia was apparently a stalwart evangelist, and through her many contacts, over 400 people reported to Pope Urban for baptism. She too is eventually caught and is sentenced to death by suffocation in her bath. Now, Romans heated their baths with wood fires underneath, and apparently Cecilia was to be locked in her bathroom, and the water would be heated 7 times hotter than normal, which was expected to steam her to death. There are records of this form of execution being used by other Roman emperors, and so it must have been a practice in their day. When it was discovered that instead of being fully cooked, Cecilia was unscathed and singing praise songs in her bathroom, maybe the origins of singing in the shower here, the prefect dispatched an executioner to put her to the sword. Whether he didn't have a heart to kill Cecilia, or he had a very dull gladius, which is a Roman sword, he was unable to succeed in removing Cecilia's head. Apparently, if this wasn't accomplished in 3 strokes, the law required the executioner to stop. Although alive, she was mortally wounded and lived 3 more days. Many around Rome came to see her as she lay dying in her home, and Cecilia prayed for some, and others she evangelized. One of those who came by to see her was Pope Urban. Cecilia gave him her house and asked that it be made into a church. When she eventually died, she was buried by Urban and his deacons in the Catacombs of Callistus. So that's the story of Saint Cecilia as it comes to us. Like many of the ancient Christian martyrs, her story is filled with elements of the supernatural, and this is where I would expect you to say, yes, but you did say at the start there are embellishments, and those things like an angel with flaming wings are one of them. But the funny thing is it harder to believe in the historical context but not the spiritual details? Why wouldn't a sincere Christian have a guardian angel? But consider the prominent place of Pope Urban I in the story. His reign as Pope was early in the 3rd century, 222 to 230 AD. What is problematic is that the Christian Church was not under any persecution at the time. In fact, the Roman Emperor Alexander Severus was quite positive in his treatment of Christians. The Emperor Alexander gave Christians the right to have houses of worship in Rome, and there was a protest by tavern owners over this, but the emperor felt that any kind of worship of God was preferable to keeping taverns. This trend continued and built momentum until the persecution of Diocletian, when he started actually confiscating and tearing down church buildings. This makes it very difficult to understand how Cecilia, Valerianus, and Tiburtius could be martyred for their faith when there really wasn't any oppression of Christians. 2 possible solutions to this dilemma is that Urban was not the pope, but a church leader, assumed to be pope because of his name. This then allows the story room to be in the 2nd century when there was a persecution under Marcus Aurelius. The other solution, which is embedded in the Golden Legend, is this is a localized persecution in Rome done by lower-level government officials without the knowledge of the emperor. I know this could never happen today. My tongue is thoroughly embedded in my cheek here. But back then, governments didn't always know what everybody was doing. In 821, there is a record of an old church in Rome dedicated to Saint Cecilia that is being restored by Pope Pascal. Pope Pascal made a search for the grave in the catacombs, and when he couldn't find it, assumed it, like the other relics of saints, had been stolen by the Lombards. One night, Saint Cecilia appears to him in a dream and tells him he is close to her resting place in the catacombs of Callistus, and to make another try. The Pope did so, and had her body removed from the catacombs along with her husband and brother-in-law and Pope Urban to the church to Trastevere when its restoration was complete. Just an aside, if you ever visit the catacombs in Rome, and you should if you ever visit there, you will find most of them empty, especially of anyone who is famous. This is because many Europeans in the early Middle Ages wanted to take a souvenir bone of a saint home with them from their trip, and they were robbing the graves. This led the Church of Rome to begin removing graves of saints into the churches and out of the catacombs as a means of protecting their mortal remains. In 1599, the Church of St. Cecilia was refurbished a second time. This time, the sarcophagus of Cecilia was opened to inspect the contents. Her body was actually found to be incorrupt. A sketch was made and sent to the Pope, who came to see the body for himself. He commissioned the sculptor Stefano Maderno to see the body and sculpt what he saw. In front of the sculpture in the church is an oath sworn by the artist that what we are looking at in stone is what he actually saw with his own eyes. As the patron saint of music, many poems and songs are written about her or for her feast day known as Saint Cecilia's Day. But Cecilia should be remembered as a woman so completely given over to Christ that when people came into contact with her, they too were convinced the gospel is true. And that is a legacy all of us should aspire to ourselves. And with that, we conclude part 2 of this series. Next time, we'll take a look at St. Helena. Until then, this is Chris White. Thanks for watching.